To calculate GDP, we say the price of the first good multiply with the quantity of the first good, then we add it to the price of the second good multiply with the quantity of the second good plus the price of the third good multiply with the quantity of the third good, and so on. So this is the way we calculate GDP if we have the question given to us in this format. You will notice that we have two types of GDP, the nominal GDP and the real GDP. So for the nominal GDP, the prices are always of each year. So when you use the prices of each year, that means you are calculating the nominal GDP. But when you use the prices of the base year, that means you are calculating the real GDP. What does base year mean? We will come to that when we're looking at the calculation of the real GDP. Now, let's calculate the nominal GDP. Nominal GDP for the first year, which is 2010, we simply say the price of the first good, which is corn. So the price of corn multiplied by the quantity of corn plus the price of the second good, which is milk, multiplied by the quantity of the second good. So price of corn multiplied by quantity of corn, that's the first good, plus the price of milk multiplied by the quantity of milk. So that's equal to, price of corn in 2010 is $4, multiplied by the quantity of corn in 2010 is 100 units, plus the price of milk in 2010 is $1.5, multiplied by the quantity of milk, that's 180 units. So simplifying, we have 4 times 100, that's 400, plus 1.5 times 180, that's 270. The sum equals 670. So the value of the nominal GDP in 2010 is 670. Next, we need to calculate the nominal GDP for 2011. So for 2011, the nominal GDP is exactly the same approach we used when we're calculating the nominal GDP for 2010. The price of corn in 2011 is $4, multiplied by the quantity of corn in 2011, that's 120 units, plus the price of milk in 2011 is $2, multiplied by the quantity of milk in 2011, that's 200 units. And then we simplify. 4 times 120, that's 480, plus 2 times 200, that's 400. So when we sum it up, we have $880. Nominal GDP in 2011 is $880. Next, we are calculating the nominal GDP in 2012. Using exactly the same approach, the price of corn in 2012 is $5, multiplied by the amount of units, which is 150 units, plus the price of milk in 2012 is 2.5, multiplied by the quantity of milk, that's 200. So simplifying, we have 5 times 150, that's 750, plus 2.5 times 200, that's 500. That will give us a sum of 1,250. So that means the nominal GDP in 2012 is $1,250. Next, the nominal GDP for 2013. Following the same approach we've been using, the price of corn in 2013 is $6 multiplied by the amount of units, which is 180 units, plus the price of milk in 2013 is $3.5 times the quantity of milk, that's 240 units, So simplifying, we have 6 times 180, that's 1080, plus 3.5 times 240, that's 840. Summing them up, we have 1080 plus 840, that will give us 1920. So this means the nominal GDP in 2013 is $1,920. And this completes the calculation of the nominal GDP for each year. Next, we are calculating the real GDP for each year. And as we've mentioned before, the calculation of the nominal GDP and the real GDP are exactly the same thing. The formula or the approach is the same. The only difference comes in which price we are going to use. So for the nominal GDP, we use the prices of each year, but for the real GDP, we use the price of the base year. So the base year is usually stated in the question. In a situation whereby the base year is not mentioned in the question, we take the smallest year or the first year as the base year. So in this situation, the first year in this question or the smallest year in this question is 2010. So if not stated, the smallest year or the first year is usually the base year. So in this case, 2010 is the base year. So you may have a question where 2011 is the base year, or you can even have a question where 2013 is the base year. Why is this base year very important? It is important because the prices we are going to use in the calculation of the real GDP must be the prices of the base year, irrespective of which year we are calculating the real GDP for. Let's look at what we mean. The first year we'll be calculating the real GDP for is 2010. So this means we have the real GDP in 2010 equals the prices of corn in the base year, which is 2010, that's $4, multiplied by quantity of corn is 100 units, plus price of milk is 1.5, multiplied by the unit in 2010, that's 180 units of milk. Simplifying, we have equals 4 times 100, that's 400, plus 1.5 times 180, that's 270. That will give us a sum of $670. So here, the real GDP is $670. If you notice, the real GDP is exactly equal to the nominal GDP. This is because in the base year, the real GDP is always equal to the nominal GDP. Why? Because we are using exactly the same price level to calculate the real GDP. Calculating the real GDP of 2011, we have equals price of corn in 2011 is $4, but we are going to use the price of corn in the base year. The base year is 2010. So, and the price of corn in 2010 is also $4. So price of corn in the base year is $4 multiplied by the quantity we are going to use. We are not using the quantity of the base year. We are using the quantity of the year we are calculating the real GDP for. So we are not using 100. We are using 120 because 120 is the year, which is 2011. So 4 times 120 plus price of milk. The price of milk in the base year, which is 2010, the price of milk is $1.5. So price of milk is $1.5 times the quantity of milk, not the quantity of milk in the base year, not this, but the quantity of milk in the year we are calculating the real GDP for, which is 2011. So quantity of milk in 2011 is 200 units. So get this again, price of the base year multiplied by the quantity of the year you are calculating the real GDP for. So simplifying, that's equal to 4 times 120, that's 480, plus 1.5 times 200, that's 300. So 480 plus 300, that will give us a sum of 780. So this means the real GDP in 2011 is 780. Next, the real GDP in 2012. That's equal to the price of corn in the base year, which is 2010, is $4, multiplied by the quantity of corn in the year we're calculating the real GDP for, that's 2012. The quantity of corn in 2012 is 150, plus the price of milk in the base year, that's 1.5, multiplied by the quantity, that's 200. So simplifying, we have equals 4 times 150, that's 600, plus 1.5 times 200, that's 300. That will give us a sum of 900. So this means the real GDP in 2012 is $900. Next, we are calculating the real GDP in 2013. The price of corn in the base year is $4, multiplied by the quantity of corn in 2013, that's 180 units, plus the price of milk in the base year is $1.5, multiplied by the quantity of milk in 2013, that's 240. So simplifying, we have equals 720 plus 1.5 times 240, that's 360. That will give us a sum of 1080. The real GDP in 2013 is $1,080. As we can see, when we compare the nominal GDP values to the real GDP values, we can see that except for the base year where they are both equal, in other years the real GDP is less than the nominal GDP. This is because nominal GDP takes into consideration the changes in the price level every year, while real GDP is calculated using a particular price of a particular year. So we can see how much the economy is changing in terms of quantity without taking into aspect or without letting it be magnified by the increasing or decreasing price level. This is why in economics we say any term or any name or any indicator that has nominal in front of it simply means inflation or changing price level is taken into consideration of the calculation. But any term or any indicator that has the word real in front of it, that simply means the changing price level is not taken into consideration. So which means a standard price level is used in the calculation of anything real, and anything nominal, the changing price level is taken into consideration. That's just a key important thing you can take note of. The next column we are going to be filling up is the GDP deflator. The GDP deflator is calculated by simply saying the nominal GDP divided by the real GDP multiplied by 100. As simple as that. First, we'll be calculating the GDP deflator of 2010. That will be equal to the nominal GDP of 2010 divided by the real GDP of 2010 multiplied by 100. So we have equals the nominal GDP of 2010 is $670 divided by the real GDP, which is also 670, times 100. So this means we have 670 divided by 670, that's 1, times 100. So that's equal to 100. Given that 2010 is our base year, that is why the GDP deflator is 100. The GDP deflator of your base year must always be 100. Next, we are calculating the GDP deflator of 2011. So this means the nominal GDP of 2011 divided by the real GDP of 2011 times 100. So GDP deflator of 2011 equals the nominal GDP in 2011 is 880 divided by the real GDP, which is 780 times 100. So that's equals 880 divided by 780. That will give us 1.128 multiplied by 100. So we have a GDP deflator of 112.8. So the GDP deflator in 2011 is 112.8. Next, we are calculating the GDP deflator of 2012. So that means we say the nominal GDP of 2012 divided by the real GDP of 2012 times 100. So we have the nominal GDP of 2012 is 1,250 divided by the real GDP of 2012, that's 900 times 100. So simplifying, we have equals 1,250 divided by 900, that's 1.389 times 100. That will give us 138.9. So the GDP deflator for 2012 is 138.9. And last, the GDP deflator for 2013, that's nominal GDP of 2013 divided by real GDP of 2013. Nominal GDP of 2013 is 1,920 divided by real GDP, which is 1,080 times 100. So simplifying, we have 1,920 divided by 1,080 equals 1.7778 times 100. So that equals 177.8. So GDP deflator for 2013 is 177.8. And this is the calculation of the GDP deflator. Just important notes, the GDP deflator of the base year is always 100. If for a particular year the nominal GDP is greater than the real GDP, then the GDP deflator will be more than 100. If the nominal GDP is less than the real GDP for a particular year, then you should expect the GDP deflator to be less than 100. That's just something important to note. The next column is the inflation rate. There are a number of ways inflation can be calculated given the information that you may have, but based on the information that we have in this particular question, the inflation rate will be calculated using the GDP deflator. So, how do we calculate the inflation rate? The inflation rate is, just like any growth formula, the inflation rate equals the GDP deflator of the current year minus the GDP deflator of the previous year divided by the GDP deflator of the previous year. Then everything multiplied by 100. And this is the inflation rate for a particular year. So, to calculate the inflation rate for 2010, that will be equal to the GDP deflator of 2010 minus the GDP deflator of 2009, because 2009 is the previous year, divided by the GDP deflator of 2009, then multiply by 100. looking at this, we have the GDP deflator for 2010, which is 100, but we don't have a GDP deflator for 2009. Hence, we can't calculate the inflation rate in 2010. So as a result, we put a dash here, and then we move on to the next year, which is 2011. So inflation rate in 2011 equals the GDP deflator of 2011 minus the GDP deflator of 2010 divided by the GDP deflator of 2010 times 100. So that's equal. GDP deflator in 2011 is 112.8 minus the GDP deflator in 2010, that's 100, divided by GDP deflator in 2010, that's also 100, then times 100. Doing this calculation, we have 100 cancels 100. We are left with 112.8 minus 100. So the inflation rate in 2011 is 12.8. So inflation rate in 2011 is 12.8%. Next, we are calculating the inflation rate in 2012. So that means we say GDP deflator in 2012 minus GDP deflator in 2011 divided by GDP deflator in 2011 multiplied by 100. So we have equals GDP deflator in 2012 is 138.9 minus GDP deflator in 2011 is 112.8 divided by 112.8 and everything times 100. So simplifying, we have equals 138.9 minus 112.8, that will give us 26.1 divided by 112.8 times 100. So that equals 26.1 divided by 112.8, that is 0.2314, then times 100. So that equals 23.14%. Or we can just say 23.1. So inflation rate in 2012 is 23.1%. Next, we are calculating the inflation rate in 2013. So that means GDP deflator in 2013 minus GDP deflator in the previous year, which is 2012, divided by GDP deflator in the previous year, 2012. So that equals GDP deflator in 2013 is 177 minus GDP deflator in the previous year, 2012, that's 138.9 divided by 138.9 times 100. So simplifying, we have equals 177 minus 138.9, that's 38.1, divided by 138.9 times 100. So that equals 0.2743 times 100. So we have 27.43%. Or we can just simplify and say 27.4%. And this completes the calculation of the inflation rate. The next column is the economic growth rate. So to calculate the economic growth rate, the formula is quite the same idea or quite the same technique as calculating the inflation rate, because economic growth rate, just like inflation rate, is a rate formula, just like the general rate formula. The only difference between inflation rate and economic growth rate is that to calculate inflation rate, we use GDP deflator. But to calculate economic growth rate, we are going to use real GDP. So this means economic growth rate equals real GDP of the current year minus the real GDP of the previous year divided by the real GDP of the previous year, everything multiplied by 100. That will give us the economic growth rate for that year. So the first year we have at hand is 2010. So economic growth rate for 2010, that equals real GDP of the current year, which is 2010, minus the real GDP of the previous year, which is 2009, divided by the real GDP of the previous year, which is 2009, everything multiplied by 100. We can see that we have the real GDP of 2010, but we don't have the real GDP of 2009 because there is no information about 2009. Hence, we can't calculate the economic growth rate in 2010 because there is no information about 2009. So we simply put a dash in the first box here. And then we move on to the next year, which is 2011. So economic growth rate in 2011 equals real GDP in the current year, which is 2011, minus real GDP in the previous year, which is 2010, divided by real GDP in the previous year, which is 2010, everything multiplied by 100. So let's put in the values. We have real GDP in 2011 is 780. Take note that we are putting in the values of the real GDP, not the nominal GDP. Do not make the mistake. Minus real GDP in 2010, that's 670, divided by real GDP in 2010, that's 670, everything multiplied by 100. So simplifying, we have equals 780 minus 670, that's 110, divided by 670 times 100. So that equals 110 divided by 670, that's 0.164 times 100. So that's equal to 16.4%. So economic growth rate in 2011 is 16.4%. Next, the economic growth rate in 2012. That will be real GDP in 2012 minus real GDP in 2011, which is the previous year, divided by the real GDP in the previous year, 2011, everything multiplied by 100. Putting in the values, we have equals real GDP in 2012 is 900 minus real GDP in 2011, that's 780, divided by 780, everything multiplied by 100. So that's equal to 900 minus 780, that's 120, divided by 780 times 100. So that equals 120 divided by 780, that's 0.154 times 100. So that equals 15.4%. Hence, the economic growth rate in 2012 is 15.4%. The last question, economic growth rate for 2013. That means the real GDP of 2013, the current year, minus real GDP of the previous year, which is 2012, divided by real GDP of the previous year, 2012, everything multiplied by 100. So putting in the values, we have real GDP of 2013, that's 1080, minus real GDP of the previous year, that's 900, divided by real GDP of the previous year, that's 900, everything multiplied by 100. So that equals 1080 minus 900, that's 180, divided by 900 times 100. So 100 here 1, 100 here 9. We are left with 180 divided by 9, and 180 divided by 9, that's 20. For 2013 is 20%. And this completes the calculation of the nominal GDP, the real GDP, the GDP deflator, the inflation rate, and the economic growth rate. If you did find this video beneficial, please leave it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching. See you in another video.